My fiancé's mother demanded half my salary, so I called off the wedding. Now, I'm a single mom fighting for my independence. Gary, 30M, and I, 28F, were set to get married next week, but after an odd talk with his mother, Linda, 55 feet, everything changed. I need help regarding my current circumstances, because I feel totally lost. 2 years ago, Gary and I met at a birthday celebration through mutual acquaintances. Despite the fact that I was gregarious and extroverted and he was shy and introverted, we clicked right away. In contrast to my commercial profession, Gary was a kind high school teacher who cherished his kids. I like Gary's shyness and his tendency to keep to himself, even though we met at a party. He was just being himself, in contrast to other guys who made an effort to impress me. After 6 months of dating, our relationship took a serious turn. After spending a lot of time together, we began discussing moving in together. At that point, Linda, Gary's mother, proposed that we move in with them in order to save money for the future. Gary, who had always lived with his parents and didn't see anything wrong with it, was totally on board. Although I appreciated my independence, I was apprehensive, but the financial consideration made sense. Linda claimed that it would be more cost-effective for us to live in the large 5-bedroom home she and her husband Tom occupied. I moved in, reluctantly giving up my flat. Linda first came across as quite kind. She included me in family activities and prepared our favorite dishes every time. She was a mother who stayed at home and took delight in caring for her family. Tom, her spouse, was a construction worker, although he was seldom present and hardly talked. Linda was in charge of the home and made all the choices. In fact, the first few months of living there were enjoyable. Linda handled all of the cooking, cleaning, and laundry. I worked hard at my job and needed to relax when I got home, so she wouldn't even let me help. Gary and I made a small contribution toward groceries and utilities, but it was insignificant in comparison to what I had previously spent. Gary and I became closer after we moved in together, and we began discussing getting married. Gary used his grandmother's ring to pop the question on my birthday last year. Linda took up the wedding arrangements right away, seemingly ecstatic about the engagement. She seemed so happy that I agreed with all of her many suggestions. Everything appeared to be going according to plan until last Thursday, when we decided to have the wedding the next week. Linda wanted to talk about something significant regarding the wedding, so she asked to have coffee with me alone. I thought it had to do with last-minute plans or a custom in the family. During my lunch hour, we met at a cafe close to my workplace. Following a brief conversation about wedding planning, she abruptly made an odd request. She informed me that I would have to deposit half of my monthly income into her account after we were married. I was totally taken aback and perplexed. She explained that it was for Gary's and my financial stability when I questioned why. I've already talked to Gary about it, and he agreed, she said. What I was hearing was unbelievable. She decided to bring this up a week before the wedding, even though I had been living with them for over a year and had been organizing it for months. After telling her that I needed some time to consider it, I walked out of the cafe. I had so many questions running through my head. Why hadn't Gary brought this up earlier? Given that we were already helping with household expenses, why would she want my money? I questioned Gary about it when I got home that night. After becoming somewhat anxious, he eventually acknowledged that his mother had discussed this with him a month prior. She had warned him that we would not be allowed to reside in her home after marriage if we didn't accept her conditions. Gary explained that he kept it from me because he was afraid we would have to move out and we weren't yet able to afford our own house after all the wedding-related costs. The fact that Gary withheld this information from me for a month upset me. We had always told one another the truth about everything. We would speak things out even if we didn't agree. This seemed like a total breach of confidence. Gary said that his mother only had our best interests in mind, but I failed to see how withdrawing half of my pay was beneficial to us. I've been feeling anxious about the whole affair because Gary and I are the only ones who know that I'm 2 months pregnant. We were glad of it even if it wasn't planned. After the baby was born, we had agreed that I would temporarily leave my job to care for our child. Gary had been in favor of this choice, and we had begun budgeting appropriately. He obviously hadn't discussed any of this with his mother though. I haven't yet informed my parents about Linda's request because they reside in another state. I don't want to worry them because they had spent a lot of money on this wedding. My best buddy suggests that I speak with Linda once more in an effort to better comprehend her viewpoint, but I must admit that I'm afraid to confront her by myself. 7 days remain till the wedding, and I'm at a loss. Gary continues telling me that I should just accept Linda's terms for the time being and that I'm overreacting. I think this is only the beginning, but he says we can work anything out later. What else will she demand if she is making these demands prior to marriage? And I start to doubt everything because Gary kept this from me for a month. I need guidance. Am I reacting too strongly to this circumstance? Since we need a place to live, should I just accept her requirements or should I refuse to back down and run the danger of destroying our relationship? First update. I made the decision to speak with Linda once again and inform her about the pregnancy after reading all of your comments. Some indicated that she might change her mind about the entire pay issue if she knew about her impending grandchild. In retrospect, I see how foolish I was to believe that. Because I didn't feel comfortable talking to Linda by myself again, I wanted Gary to be there. He excused himself by saying he had extra lessons at school and had to stay back when I told him this morning that I was going to notify Linda about the pregnancy. Since it's spring break, I thought it was strange, but I didn't press the issue. After Linda finished preparing dinner yesterday evening, I ended up meeting her by myself in her kitchen. As usual, Tom was in the living room watching TV. Totally unaware of anything going on in the home. Despite my nervousness, I made the decision to end it now. I began by informing her that I had some significant news to share with her. I was expecting her granddaughter, who was 2 months along. I thought she would at least show a little excitement or joy, but she had the exact opposite reaction. She yelled so loudly that I'm sure the neighbors could hear her as her cheeks flushed with rage. She accused me of deceiving her son with this pregnancy and called me manipulative. She claimed that I had orchestrated the entire incident to damage their family's reputation. I was taken aback because Gary and I had lived in their home for 2 years together and were being married in less than a week. Was anyone being trapped by this pregnancy? She went utterly crazy when I told her that I was going to quit my job when the kid was delivered. She began to pace the kitchen and said that since they required my pay for household necessities, she would not allow me to resign. She dropped a bombshell when I reminded her that I had never committed to pay her my wage in the first place. She informed me that months prior to his proposal, Gary had already promised her my pay. I had the impression that I had been punched in the stomach. Gary had been cooperating with her intentions all along and was aware of them. But Linda wasn't finished. She continued to talk about how my unintended pregnancy had ruined everything. She claimed that she was only permitting our marriage because I made a nice living and that she saw no need in the wedding now that I intended to resign from my position. I immediately called Gary, but he didn't answer. Despite my repeated attempts to call, the call went directly to voicemail. When he eventually got home at around 9 p.m., I waited for him to do so, and Linda filled him in on everything. I thought he would defend me and our child, but he chose to support his mother. He suggested that I should have used birth control more carefully and that my desire to resign from my work was causing needless turmoil. It was unbelievable to me that this was the same Gary who, only a few days prior, had been thrilled about the baby, who had even begun researching baby names online and had helped me cope with morning sickness. He seemed to be a totally different person when his mother was there. Gary slept on the couch as I sobbed in our room all night. He never once came to see how I was doing, even at that point. When I tried to speak with him again this morning before he left for school, he suggested that I either accept his mother's demands or put off the wedding until we could work things out. He didn't even admit that his mother had treated me rudely or that, because of our child, she had essentially threatened to call off our wedding. As I give it more thought, I see that Gary has never really challenged his mother on any issue. He advised me to dress more modestly when she made comments about my attire. He said she was merely attempting to assist when she rearranged our room without asking. He suggested I should be thankful she was doing all the work when she altered our wedding arrangements without telling me. He constantly told me to change or offered justifications for her actions. I contacted my mother and told her everything since I was at my breaking point. She was so angry that she promised to get me a plane home right away. I pleaded with her not to exacerbate the situation by coming here herself to confront Linda. To help me decompress, she invited me to come stay with her for a few days and pack some clothing. This is being typed from my mother's home. Gary claims that I'm being dramatic and hormonal due to the pregnancy, and he has been phoning and messaging me nonstop. He argues that by departing in this manner, I'm embarrassing him and that I should return home to make amends with his mother for causing her distress. My mother believes that I should give this marriage a lot more thought. She claims that if Linda is making such demands prior to marriage and Gary is unable to resist her at this time, things will only worsen once they are married. She is concerned about how they will handle the baby and me. I'm not sure if the wedding should take place at all, and it's in 5 days. I can't help but think of how fast Gary changed when he had to decide between me and his mother. When she starts making more demands after marriage, what will happen? Will my child witness their father consistently picking their grandmother above their mother as they grow up? Second update, I cancelled the wedding. I eventually found the strength to make this tough choice after spending 2 days at my mom's house, contemplating everything. Gary unexpectedly came up at my mom's place the night after I posted my last update. My mother had gone to fetch groceries, so she wasn't home. At first, I believed he had come to express regret or at least, to try to comprehend my perspective. Rather, he began scolding me about how staying at my mom's house was embarrassing him and his family. He claimed that family members had begun to phone and inquire as to why I wasn't home, and he wasn't sure how to respond. His demeanor only exacerbated the morning nausea I was already experiencing. I informed him upfront that unless he defied his mother and agreed with my choice about the child, I would not marry him. I saw his true colors in his remark. We needed a place to live, so he suggested that if I truly cared about our child, I would continue working and give his mother what she desired. He said he wasn't going to leave his parents' house because I was being difficult when I proposed that we rent a tiny apartment instead. I realized then that Gary would never change. He would be his mother's puppet forever. I returned my engagement ring to him after taking it off. He became irate and accused me of selfishness and self-centeredness. I understood the irony of what he was saying. I questioned him about how he could allow his mother to treat his child's mother in such a disrespectful manner. He insisted that I was overreacting even though he had no response. I began phoning all of our guests to cancel things the following morning, my hands shaking. 3 days before the wedding was scheduled, it was embarrassing to have to tell everyone why it was cancelled. While some were judgmental, others were understanding. My parents helped me deal with all the vendors and cancellations and were really encouraging. The actual drama began at that point. Linda, the head of Gary's family, began circulating rumors among our acquaintances. I called off the wedding because they told everyone I had cheated on Gary. They claimed that I was deceiving Gary about the pregnancy. In fact, some common acquaintances who had known us for years took them at face value and ceased communicating with me. I started getting angry messages from Linda. She claimed that I had destroyed her son's life and that she would see to it that I felt bad about my choice. She started making up new social media profiles to torment me, and I blocked her number when she threatened to report my unstable behavior to my employer. In the end, I blocked their whole family. Gary kept attempting to reach me at several numbers. Occasionally, when he was upset, he would accuse me of being selfish. At other times, he would beg, stating we could resolve the issue, but he never confronted his mother or expressed regret for keeping things from me. While Gary and Linda were at a family gathering, my mother assisted me in moving all of my belongings out of their home. Tom was present, but he did nothing but observe in silence while we packed everything. However, his assistance in carrying several boxes to the car was perhaps the most involvement he had ever showed in a family matter. I feel like I can breathe for the first time in weeks now that I'm back at my mom's house. Although some people are criticizing me for being unmarried and pregnant, I would much rather be a single mother than be forced to live in a marriage where my husband and his mother run my entire life. Surprisingly, my employer has been sympathetic to my plight. After I told my manager about it, she made arrangements for me to work from home because I've been experiencing severe morning sickness. At least I haven't yet had to deal with my coworkers' inquiries. I squandered 2 years with someone who couldn't decide between his mother and his unborn child, and that's the only thing that hurts. Even though it was a tough choice, I know it was the right one. My child deserves better than a grandmother who treats them like a bother and a father who is incapable of advocating for them. Third update. Since my last update, everything in my life has changed drastically. Last month, I gave birth to Emma, my gorgeous baby girl. Both physically and emotionally, the pregnancy was challenging. During the last trimester, I experienced high blood pressure and terrible morning sickness. My mother was incredible. In order to support me during the last few months of my pregnancy and the initial weeks following delivery, she took a 3-month leave of absence from her employment. Through some mutual connections, Gary learned of Emma's birth. The day after I gave birth, he and Linda arrived at the hospital. Only my family was permitted to visit, as I had made clear on my admissions paperwork. Linda made quite a commotion in the hospital lobby when the nurses intervened. She was yelling about my deprivation of her son's child and her rights as a grandma. They had to be escorted out by hospital security. After this episode, my doctor was worried about my blood pressure and kept me under monitoring for an additional day. Gary's attorney called me regarding custody arrangements a week after we returned home from the hospital. Linda had been writing on Facebook about filing a lawsuit, so I wasn't shocked. We're now working out the custody details, and I have my own lawyer. According to my lawyer, Gary's petition for 50-50 custody is improbable because he never offered any support during my pregnancy. I benefit from the fact that we have records of Linda's hospital harassment and all of her threatening texts. 2 months ago, something unexpected happened. Gary's calm father, Tom, paid me a secret visit. He claimed to have wanted to speak with me for months, yet he appeared anxious. He told me something startling and expressed regret for not speaking up sooner. 5 years prior, Linda had done similar things to Gary's ex-girlfriend, Sarah. Although Sarah left Gary before to the engagement, she had insisted on receiving a portion of her inheritance. Tom claimed that although Linda had threatened to divorce him if he meddled in family affairs, he had wished to warn me. Last week, I started a new job. With a 30% pay increase, it's actually a better job than the one I had before. Emma's management is greatly aided by the company's excellent maternity benefits and flexible scheduling. While I'm at work, my mom has been fantastic with the baby. It offers her something to look forward to each day, she claims. Linda hasn't given up yet. She makes fictitious social media profiles in order to reach me and make offensive remarks about me. She even made an attempt to get in touch with my new employer, but fortunately, my manager was sympathetic to the circumstance. After hearing Tom's side of the story, a few of our mutual acquaintances who had first accepted their lies apologized, but I'm avoiding contact with anyone associated with that family. I return every gift that Gary sends Emma. He sent us a giant teddy bear last week along with a statement expressing how much he missed us. I sent it with a message requesting that he only speak with our attorneys. I refuse to allow him or his mother to use presents and kind words to re-enter our life. Emma deserves better than a father who was unable to defend her before she was even born, and a grandmother who views her as a problem. Unless there is a significant development in the custody case, I doubt I will be updating again. In retrospect, I'm so happy I followed my gut and called off the wedding. Sometimes breaking up with someone right before marriage is preferable to being in a dominating marriage where you lose your independence and dignity. Emma is currently waking up from her slumber. I want to express my gratitude to everyone for clearing my confusion 6 months ago. Even when life isn't perfect, what matters most is that we're happy.